Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. Episode 76 of Nerdery and Murdery.
I'm Zig with your nerdery, and it's spooky.
And I'm Geoffrey with your murdery, and it's our Halloween episode, even though it's late by about 2 weeks.
we kind of missed out on our counting, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I think it was actually on me. So
messed up on our counting of episodes. So this Halloween episode comes late, so maybe some people are still celebrating Halloween.
Woo! I know we like it a lot in my house.
Well, we try. You know, we're not the greatest at this, but we certainly try. So, Zig, with that, I will let you take over on the Halloween nerdery.
Woohoo! This is awesome. So today I'm going to talk about 5 sci-fi horror films.
All right.
I picked specifically B-movie sci-fi horror films.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these are Roger Corman productions. So
that makes sense.
Yes. The first one is Galaxy of Terror. Dun, dun, dun. And if you're not familiar with Galaxy of Terror, that's the one where they killed Joni from Happy Days.
Oh, okay.
That's how most people know it. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I've seen that. So Galaxy of Terror is a 1981 science fiction horror film produced by Roger Corman through New World Pictures and directed by Bruce D. Clark, distributed through United Artists. It stars Edward Albert, Aaron Moran, Ray Walston, and Taffy O'Connor.
The great Ray Walston.
Yeah, I think Grace Zabrisky's also in it from Twin Peaks.
Who was she in Twin Peaks?
She was the mom.
Oh, okay.
It was made by the B-movie king, Roger Corman, and started the careers of many prominent Hollywood people with this and another film, Battle Beyond the Stars. One of the earliest films to feature the work of James Cameron.
Oh, really?
He started out as a model builder on this and basically ended up the director of photography. That one and Battle Beyond the Stars, which he basically did at the same time. They used footage from this movie and Battle Beyond the Stars in like a dozen other films for the Corman enterprise. So the story takes place on two planets. The first is an Earth-like world called Xerxes, and you see two figures who are playing this strange sort of chess game. One, an old woman named Mitri, who's identified as the controller of the game, while the other, a male whose head is obscured by a glowing ball, is referred to as the planet master. The two speak cryptically of things being put into motion, and the master instructs Ilvar, one of his military commanders, to send a ship on a rescue mission to the other world, Morganthus, for a ship that's disappeared. So without delay, the spaceship Quest blasts off to Morganthus. As it approaches the planet's atmosphere, it suddenly veers out of control. The captain and tech officer are able to make a controlled crash landing on the surface. After recovering from the crash, the mission's team leave the Quest in search for survivors. Crossing the landscape of the planet, they eventually reach the other vessel where they find evidence of a massacre that's taken place. While wrapping up their survey of the ship, a high-strung young member of the team becomes increasingly terrified. Despite being reassured by his seniors, a short time later, while he is alone, he is killed by a grotesque creature that immediately vanishes, leaving only his mutilated body in search for T-Pod. Robert Englund is also in this. Yeah, I mean, it's just awesome. You had Edward Albert, Aaron Moran, Ray Walston, Taffy O'Connor, Bernard Behrens, Zalman King as Valerian, Robert Englund as Ranger, the ship's second technical officer, Sid Haig as Cohade, crewman, and Crystal Shuriken thrower, Grace Zabriskie as the captain, and Jack Blessing as Kaz. So you come to find out that they got sent there to check out this monolith that exists in the middle of this planet.
2001 ripoff.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's more like a pyramid. They rip off 2001. They rip off Alien. But the technical designs on this are so good. It's surprising that this is a B movie given the technological era they were in at the time.
Pretty much all of Roger Corman are B movies.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's what he did. But okay, so they all wear these backpacks with these lights on the shoulder pads that point in a solid direction. Roger Corman used that same design later on in a couple of, or not Roger Corman, James Cameron used that same design later on when he was doing movies because it's just a good design. I think it's actually his, but it's just brilliant. You go back and watch this movie, it really looks like a first run production. It looks as good as Alien. And the monster's not quite as good, but I think it's because they lit the monster too much. Because the thing that made Alien so scary is you never really got a full view of it.
Right.
You only got parts and pieces, and it was shadowed and whatnot, or it was all curled up. But yeah, I think if they'd these different monsters, if they'd have lit them a little differently, they'd have looked a little better. But yeah, the set design, the costume design, everything in this is it was as good as Black Hole.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I love
definitely
black
one you need
holes.
it's definitely one you need to get out and see. Although a black hole, when they finally get on the ship, it's very big and expansive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Nothing is big and expansive like that except for the pyramid that they're climbing up, but it's in the dark. So everybody eventually begins to feel this terror effect. Um, the ship's cook, which is Ray Walston, and a couple of the other crew member, um, they kind of join forces with the dwindling mission because everybody's doing a different job in the beginning. It's like, okay, the rescue team goes out. Well, the captain and the techs and everybody else works on the ship. Well, eventually they all come back together, but every time someone, right before they die, they end up experiencing this terror, and it will be like a monster, or it'll be a double of themselves, or but toward the end, they find out that Ray Walston is actually the planet master, the guy who's been controlling it, the ship's cook. He's actually the bad guy in this, but you don't know that. You don't know that until like 15 minutes before the movie's over.
Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. Well, in 1981. I mean, it was 40 years ago. And the master forces the Cabrarian, Edward Albert, to face all of the monsters that attack the others, and he succeeds, and the master tells him that he has won the game, and the master then explains that the pyramid is actually an ancient toy for the children of a long dead extinct race, built in order to test their ability to control fear. Angered, Cabrarian kills the master's previous host body, but as the master cannot die, Cabrarian becomes the new host, which is kind of how this ends. But I only want to give a little bit of background on the plot there, because there's a lot of stuff going on. It's a little weird. Everybody in this is really good. Edward Albert, who's kind of a B movie actor, I want to say he ends up doing a bunch of, if you go to the site, you can see his picture. I want to say he goes up and ends up doing, soap operas and things like that. He's really the only one who's not pulling his weight, as it were. And honestly, the character's not terribly interesting. Everybody else is aces, straights, and flushes. Sid Haig is a crazy guy who throws these crystal shuriken. Just amazing. Erin Moran was actually really good in it. She gets killed pretty early on, but there's a couple of scenes that are they almost got an X rating for, because this one creature attacks this empathic lady, and basically she dies by ecstasy from this monstrous machine, or this monstrous creature. They had to kind of scale that scene back again, because there was like, we're going to give you an X rating for this, so they had to cut some of the scenes on that. And it's a weird scene. I don't know why they put it in. It's the only one I really don't agree with. I mean, like, you could have killed her any old way. I think Erin Moran gets stabbed by a bunch of broken glass, which is kind of gross. But yeah, it's definitely a Roger Corman film. How was it Joe Bob Briggs used to call it? Multiple aardvarking.
Yes.
Lots of death. Oh, I probably should explain that. So for our listeners out there who are not familiar, in Texas, we have this film critic called Joe Bob Briggs, and he reviews B movies. He only reviews B movies. He doesn't review regular movies. And he had a scale for sex scenes that he called aardvarking. So if there's more than one sex scene, he says multiple aardvarking, which is, since we're talking about B movies, I probably ought to bring that up. The next movie in the list is called Forbidden World. Now, according to director Alan Holtzman, he began shooting without a script with these directions from Corman. You have 4 days to write, produce, and direct a 7 to 8 minute opening for a space movie. I'll give you an astronaut and a robot, And if you need any inspiration, I've always wanted to do a version of Lawrence Arabia in outer space. So, Forbidden World was originally titled Mutant, and it's an 1982 American science fiction horror film. Screenplay was written by Tim Kernan from a short story by R.J. Robertson and Jim Wynorski. It was co-edited and directed by Alan Holtzman, who had edited Battle Beyond the Stars, which is that other one that we spoke about 2 years earlier. The cast included Jesse Vint, Don Dunlap, June Chadwick, Lyndon Chilean, Fox Harris, and Michael Bowen. Future World has been released under the titles Mutant and Subject 20. The film did receive 3 nominations for the 1983 Saturn Awards for Best Low Budget Film, Best Makeup, and Best Special Effects. It was generally panned by critics as a cheap, explorative imitation of the movie Alien with sex, nudity, and uneven editing. Cheap special effects and a sound design, which some moviegoers found unpleasant. Although the electronic music score produced by Susan Justin received mostly positive attention, it is frequently paired with and compared to the previous year, Corman produced Alien ripoff Galaxy of Terror, for which Forbidden World shares some of the same sets. Again, designed by James Cameron. The movie also makes use of footage recycled from the 1980 movie Battle Beyond the Stars, which was also produced by Corman. So again, the stuff from Battle Beyond the Stars and Galaxy of Terror were recycled. This film was remade in 1991 under the title Dead Space, on which Corman served as the executive producer. The remake has minor variations, but still retains the plot and character stylings of the original. Also referred to the mutant virus as a metamorph, as the original did. In the distant future, at a genetic research station located on the remote desert planet of Zarbia, a research team has created an experimental life form they have designated Subject 20. This life form was built out of the synthetic DNA strain Proto-B and was intended to stave off a galaxy-wide food crisis. However, Subject 20 mutates rapidly and uncontrollably and kills all the laboratory subject animals before cocooning itself within an examination booth. Military officer Mike Colby, accompanied by his robot assistant Sam 104, is called in to investigate the problem. After Colby settles in his destination to terminate Subject 20 to prevent further deaths, he's met with research-minded secretary and resistance. Research-minded secrecy and resistance. The staff of the station includes the head of research, Gordon Hauser, his assistant, Barbara Glazer, lab assistant, Tracy Baxter, lab technician, Jimmy Swift, electrician, Brian Beal, and the station's head of security, Earl Richards, and Cal Timbergren as the medical doctor. So basically, they have to go to this planet where this experiment got out of control. But the problem is, anytime they go out onto the surface of the planet, there's oxygen, right? You don't need a breathing apparatus to go onto the surface of this planet. But because of the way the atmosphere is, it ends up causing nitrogen narcosis. Mm-hmm. So you have to wear a mask, basically, but not a full EV suit. So part of the problem is they play on that a lot, where people lose their mask while they're trying to walk across the planet and end up getting nitrogen narcosis, like you do when you're underwater.
Right.
James Cameron used this idea in
Alien.
Well, also, what was the water movie? I can't think of it off the top. Not Titanic.
Water movie.
Yeah, where they had it had Ed Harris in it, Mary Elizabeth Mastertonio. Oh my God. I can't believe I can't think of that movie. I want to say it's The Deep, but it wasn't. I'll think of it.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm not sure at all.
James Cameron came back and used that idea later, because there's a military guy who gets nitrogen narcosis because they're on a drilling platform. Played by Michael Biehn, whom I love. But sorry, circling back as we do. When Subject 20 hatches from its cocoon, it begins killing the personnel at the station, starting with Jimmy, who was charged with cleaning the subject lab and all the dead animals out of the lab so they could use it. And Subject 20 continues to kill most of the station's crew. The reason for the deception is revealed. Subject 20's genetic design incorporated human DNA, and its method of killing is to inject its prey with Proto-B DNA strain, which then proceeds to remove all genetic differences within specific cells. The result of the victim's living body slowly erodes into a gelatinous pile of pure protein, which Subject 20 consumes for subsistence. After its final mutation, when the creature evolves into a huge insectoid-like being with a large mouth full of sharp teeth, the creature is slain when it eats Cal's cancer-ridden liver. Its body genetically self-destructs from within. Mike and Tracy are left as the only survivors from Subject 20's rampage. So the final design, the early designs in this are really good. It's a really scary monster, a la The Thing. But the final design looks like Audrey.
From Little Shop of Horrors?
Yeah. Looks like they took Audrey and kind of rounded off her mouth, spray painted her black. I have a picture in the list. I was not as impressed with this movie as I was the other one, with the final monster pieces. But the early pieces where it's basically, they're turning people into gelatinous goo, some of those effects are pretty cool. And the sound for this movie feels claustrophobic, which kind of helps, I think. But I always loved this. I had this on video. I ended up wearing a videotape out of this movie because I just loved it. Watched it over and over.
Event Horizon is another one of those that's very claustrophobic.
Yes, and also in this genre. Yeah, especially when he's crawling around those tunnels made of circuit board. The lights go out and the lights come on, and he's talking to his dead wife with the black eye. Oh, that's a creepy one.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The next movie in our list is called Dead Space. Now, as I said, this is the remake of the previous film. However, this remake has something that the original movie didn't have. Mark Singer, as well as Bryan Cranston.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, they were awful. Bryan Cranston was young in this. Lori Lively, Randy Reinholz, Judith Chapman, Laura Tate, and Liz Rogers. So there are minor differences in this film. They use some of the same sets, but the sets are some of the same ones they recycled from, some of the previous Galaxy of Terror. So the sets look really good. Again, it's a lot of stuff that James Cameron designed, so they just kept them around. It retains the original main storyline and the new character setup of the troubleshooter coming in to help the research lab. But they kind of take some turns away from the movie. It's interesting to watch these back to back to see how far they were able to advance the technology, because Dead Space came out in 1991. Now, if you're looking this film up, type in 1991 after you type in Dead Space, because there was an animated film or a couple of animated films called Dead Space, which kind of share the same sort of idea. But this is the live action one. Singer said that he had fun shooting this movie and felt that it was an unpretentious, rip-roaring space adventure. The film had a working title of Biohazard, and some of the space battle effects were reused from Battle Beyond the Stars, which was released in 1980. So they were reusing 11-year-old footage. The effects team wanted a monster different from anything that had been seen before. Task made more complicated as the movie was shot in 3 weeks.
Wow.
An inner harness was developed, which allowed for rapid mobility of the actor in the monster suits. GM foam and hair inserts were used to show the transformation of a human into this monster. Because it actually, instead of it being a human DNA, they actually started with a human and turned him into a monster. But yeah, the armature that they used for this monster, a lot better than the final monster in Subject 20 or Forbidden World, however you saw it, because you could buy them both ways. I think I had it as Subject 20. I think the videotape I had was called Subject 20, and it may have been because it was like a European or a British release. But in the story, the research facility on the planet Fablos, a virus is created in a botched experiment which turns the infected into monsters. An emergency distress call is sent from the lab, spacecraft crewed by Commander Stephen Krieger and a robot sidekick, Tin Pan.
Tin Pan?
Tin Pan, which I think is a great name for a robot. It's better than Chalmers. Is the emergency call from the planet, and their craft is attacked and damaged on the way to Fablos. Upon the arrival at Fablos, those in charge of the laboratory explain they have managed to contain the virus. Krieger, which is the Mark Singer character, accepts the lab's claim and begins repair of his ship. The scientists had not been entirely honest with Krieger and have been attempting to study the virus rather than contain it. Unfortunately, the virus escapes and infects the lab worker, which happens in every one of these films. Of course, if it didn't, you wouldn't have much of a movie. It'd be people cleaning up a lab.
Right.
Which would not be nearly as interesting and not have the horror effect. So they leave the lab to face a killer virus that turns them into alien monsters. Krieger and Tin Pan attempt to stop the monster, but their weapons prove ineffective. One of the lab workers develops a bioweapon that proves effective in stopping the monster. This and Subject 20, Forbidden World, should be kind of seen as bookends.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If you're going to watch two really good B sci-fi horror films, these are two that you can watch together because it's essentially the same storyline, but you get to see how they told it differently. Howard Hawks did that with a John Wayne movie, which eventually I think I'll talk about because I love all three of those films. El Dorado, Rio Lobo, and I can't remember what the first one was called, but basically it's the same storyline told in three different ways. Kind of, they view it from the same person's perspective, but they take twists and turns with the characterization and things that you don't really get. You don't really get to see that very often. Usually when they're making a movie, they have an idea, a script, but they're shooting it. It's like, you know what, that idea doesn't work. Let's try something else. And they end up doing that. In this case, you get to see how both of those scenarios play out. So I think it's really fascinating. Besides, Bryan Cranston at that early age, he really acts the shit out of this role. I'm just going to be honest. And they gave him almost nothing to work with. And they shot it over 3 weeks. So I would definitely see
Bryan Cranston's a great actor anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not hard to see that at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's great. Dead Space of 1991 and Forbidden World of 1982. Sorry, should be seen in bookends because essentially they're the same story but told in different ways, and really nice. And I've got some scenes and stuff from there in both of them in the YouTube playlist. If the folks will go to our YouTube site, it should be titled Episode 76 Halloween Horror Sci-Fi Films. But if you just type in EP 76 or go to the list, EP 76 is the one you want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And there's I've got a lot of stuff in that playlist, including our next film, which I have in its entirety in that playlist. Because right now no one's releasing it. So it's like when we were watching Blake 7, no one really had the rights to it at that point. They're kind of working out who's going to be showing it so they can show it on YouTube. I fully expect that Moontrap eventually will be taken out of this list and we'll have to remove it. It'll be a bad link. But right now the film is there in its entirety. So if you guys hear this, go to that playlist and scroll down to Moontrap and you can watch the whole film on YouTube. Moontrap is an American 1989 science fiction film from Magic Films, written by Tex Ragsdale and directed by Robert Dyke. Moontrap is not a Roger Corman production. However, it does have Walter Koenig and Bruce Campbell.
Nice.
Yes.
Anything with Bruce Campbell is great.
Oh,
and
yeah. Bruce.
Generally a B movie.
Yeah. Honestly, this film is incredible. I love this movie. Bruce Campbell is like this hotshot young pilot, and Walter Koenig is this older, more experienced pilot. And Walter Koenig is actually really great in this. My only problem with this film is the rug that Walter Koenig is wearing in this movie.
Oh,
it's terrible. Yeah, it's terrible. It's worse than the ones he used for the Star Trek movies, which were not good, but they actually looked realistic. They weren't as bad as Shatner's. But yeah, the rug that he uses, because there are a couple of scenes where he's like doing push-ups and stuff. It's like, oh no, don't show the top of his head. Stop. Because you can see it. And, it probably wasn't his idea to have a rug. I'm sure it was the production designers. Because when he takes pictures, you get to see the top of his head. He doesn't care. But yeah, they also have an actress named Leah Lombardi, who's a European actress. She was an ancient astronaut from the distant past who faces an alien invasion by a race of predatory cyborgs. So, the very opening of this film, you may think something's wrong with the sound, but if you go in and listen to it for 30 seconds, you realize what it was. It's the telemetry coming back from the Apollo 11 mission.
Mm-hmm.
The opening of this film is them landing on the moon. And it's the actual recorded. So it's poor sound quality because they were beaming it back from the moon.
Right. There's
not much you can clean up on that. They did a little bit. But yeah, you first start listening, it's like, what's wrong with the sound? Oh no, because when I picked the movie up out of YouTube, I watched it all the way through because I was like, do I want to do Moontrap? And I was like, oh no, there's something wrong with the sound. And then I realized what I was listening to. And I was like, oh no, that's fine. That's fine. So it opens with July 20th, 1969. A robot eye emerges from the lunar soil and observes the landing module of the Apollo 11 mission taking off. So 20 years later, the space shuttle Camelot encounters a derelict spaceship in orbit around Earth. Mission Commander Colonel James Grant leaves the shuttle to investigate. He discovers a reddish-brown pod and a mummified human corpse. Both are brought back to Earth, where it is found that they originated on the moon some 14,000 years ago. Shortly thereafter, the unattended pod comes to life, and it constructs a cybernetic body with parts from the mummified remains. So it uses bits of technology and bits of organic matter to build itself a body. Spoiler alert, they do it to Bruce Campbell later on. And him in that getup, because he's smiling the whole time, is hysterical. The being kills a lab technician and exchanges fire with security guards before Grant destroys it with a shotgun blast to the head. Now, in the opening of this movie, there's always that one scientist who walks up and tries to reason with the alien. This is the best twist I've ever seen. The scientist walks up and tries to reason with it, and the thing hurts the scientist. The scientist turns around to the guys and go, "Kill this son of a bitch!" You never see that in any other movie. Because usually the scientist gets killed. But so they figure out that the only way to stop these pods is to actually destroy the pod part of itself. Like you can't hurt any of the parts that it builds around itself because those are just add-ons. It can repair all of those. You have to destroy that central pod. And this thing is smart. It will surround that pod with body parts, pieces of metal, whatever. So because this went down at NASA, they decide that they can dust off the last completed Apollo rocket. And Grant and Ray Tanner, again, the great Bruce Campbell, go to the moon on a search and destroy mission, which is completely unfeasible. You know, it takes forever to get, but they get this up and running in like 6 weeks. It's taken us 30 years to get a moon mission back up and running. But apparently they talk about, you know, we've got a mothballed Saturn V out in Cape Canaveral. Why don't we just use that? It's like, oh yeah, we can use that. No, they don't. They don't. They don't have it. And even if they did, it wouldn't work because it's been sitting in the Florida weather for 20 years. Anyway, when they get to the moon, they find a base. But the previous moon missions didn't see it because they didn't go to that part of the moon. And unless you're looking at it from the right angle, it just looks like a hill because all the dust has blown up or deposited over it over the last 14,000 years. So they inside they find a woman in suspended animation who identifies herself in a rudimentary fashion as Mira and reveals the name of the killer cyborgs, the Kalium. The two survivors, there were two survivors of Kalium attack. They return to, that makes no sense. So the Kaliums start attacking them at the base, the pod things, and they start taking apart old pieces of the old lunar stuff that we left. So Grant and Mira, they try to get back to the lunar module. Mira has her own spacesuit. The Kalium shoot down the command module when they try to take off with the one that they brought. So they end up having to go to another module to get home. Tanner is killed and Grant and Mira are taken prisoner. The Kalium head to Earth in a giant ship with these humans aboard. Grant and Mira free themselves and find the landing module, which has been enmeshed in the ship's machinery. Grant supposes the module was the last piece of equipment the Kalium needed to complete their ship. He starts the module's self-destruct sequence before he and Mira exit through a breach in the hull. Using the gun's recoil as propellant, the ship explodes after they have reached a safe distance. Sometime later, Grant and Mira are shown as a couple living on Earth, having learned to speak English. Mira explains that she was put into stasis to warn others about the Kalium. Grant reassures her that the Kalium have been defeated. Later, a Kalium pod that survived the explosion is shown in a junkyard preparing to build itself a new body. In the post-credit audio clip, Grant speaks to a NASA official about the possibility of any debris that may have fallen to Earth in the aftermath of the ship's explosion. The official dismisses his concerns and assures Grant that any debris from the alien ship would have burned up in the atmosphere. But in the middle of all of this, Grant realizes why these pods are attacking humans. He needs they need part of us to build bodies. Like these pods have to have some organic material to function, which is why they used bits of the mummy originally in the film. They basically take these people apart. And when they get to that ship, the Kaliums have other people of Mira's species in stasis using them as parts and pieces. It's kind of horrible. But anyway, this species, you find out that this group of people put up a base on the moon basically to watch mankind and got attacked by these Kalium. You can watch the whole film on our playlist. It's not great. The acting's pretty good. The special effects could be a little better. Some of the ideas, again, are far-fetched. Like they can't just go, they can't, say, decide they're going to the moon and 6 weeks later go. That just doesn't happen, but Walter Koenig and Bruce Campbell more than make up for it. I love this movie. I thought it was brilliant. And, Information Society, their second album.
Mm-hmm.
You know how in their first album they used a bunch of lines from Star Trek?
Yeah.
A lot of their songs. Their second album, they use a lot of lines from this movie.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's all throughout the movie. Have you ever seen Moontrap?
No.
Okay. Have you ever seen any of these so far?
No, I haven't seen any of these, and they all sound perfectly horrible.
Some of them, they have a charm all their own. But I would recommend at least looking through some of the scenes of Galaxy of Terror, because some of the model work is exceptional. Just looking at some of that model work, it's great. Plus the acting's, with the exception of Edward Albert, not Eddie Albert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my next film is The Hidden. Now, this was not necessarily a B movie because it did show in theaters and it got promoted like a regular movie. But it's an American science fiction horror film directed by Jack Shoulder and written by Jim Koof under the pseudonym Bob Hunt. Or Jim Koof was pseudonym Bob Hunt. It was released by New Line Cinema and starred Kyle MacLachlan and Michael Norrie, along with Clu Gulager, Chris Mulkey, Edo Ross, Clarence Felder, Claudia Christensen, and Larry Cedar. William Mulkey is the actor who I couldn't think of in Another 48 Hours, the one that plays Galvez.
Yeah.
Love this actor. He's so great. Everybody in this is great. Claudia Christensen, before she went on to Babylon 5, did this movie. She played basically a stripper who got taken over by one of the creatures. They did make a sequel called The Hidden 2, but I don't think I've ever seen it. But basically, Jack DeVries, Chris Mulkey, a quiet citizen with no criminal past, robs a Los Angeles Wells Fargo bank, kills all the security guards inside, and leads the Los Angeles Police Department on a high-speed chase. The chase ends when DeVries encounters a police blockade overseen by Detective Thomas Beck, Michael Norrie. DeVries is shot several times, smashes through the blockade, and crashes the Ferrari he's driving. DeVries is taken to a hospital where a doctor informs Beck and his partner, Detective Cliff Willis, Edo Ross, that DeVries is not expected to survive the night. Upon his return, the LAPD headquarters, Beck and his supervisor, Lieutenant John Masterson, Clarence Felder, meet FBI Special Agent Lloyd Gallagher, played by Kyle
MacLachlan. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Who informs them that Beck has been assigned to work with Gallagher to track down DeVries. When told that DeVries' condition, Gallagher rushes off to the hospital. It's like, dude, the guy's dead. And so, meanwhile, at the hospital, DeVries suddenly awakens, disconnects his life support equipment, and approaches a comatose man in the next bed, Jonathan P. Miller, played by William Boyett. After DeVries forces Miller's mouth open, a slug-like alien emerges from DeVries' mouth and transfers itself into Miller's body. Gallagher arrives to find DeVries dead on the floor and Miller's bed abandoned. Gallagher tells Beck to put out an alert on Miller, but Beck refuses because Miller has no criminal record. It's at this point that Miller goes to a record store. I believe it's Captain Bob's Records. It's a little independent record shop run by, he was a wrestler.
Oh, shoot, I don't know.
Lou Albini.
Okay.
Lou Albini owns Captain Bob's Record. It's a little independent record shop. Cyndi Lauper spent a lot of time there. Matter of fact, I want to say she shot one of her videos there. Also, the original. Oh my God, Tenacious D spent most of its time inside that record store.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same record store. So Miller goes to a record store where he beats the store's owner to death. He then goes to a car dealership where he kills 3 men and steals a red Ferrari. He then visits a strip club where the alien leaves Miller's body and takes over the body of the stripper named Brenda, which is Claudia Christensen of Babylon 5 fame. Gallagher asks police to track Brenda. When he sees her picture next to Miller's body, Brenda is then propositioned by a cat caller. She accepts and follows him to his car, then proceeds to have vehicular sex in a parking lot, which results in his death. So basically, they're having sex in the car, and she ends up killing him. She then takes his car. Gallagher and Beck pursue her to a rooftop where they mortally wound her in a gun battle. As Brenda dies, Gallagher points a strangely shaped alien weapon at her. However, she leaps from the roof. As Masterson arrives from his house to take charge of the scene, the alien transfers itself from Brenda's dying body to Masterson's dog. Frustrated by Gallagher's continued refusal to explain the strange phenomenon of ordinary citizens turning into crazed killers, Beck arrests him and puts him in a jail cell. Beck soon learns that Gallagher is an imposter, impersonating the real Agent Gallagher, who is dead. When Beck confronts Gallagher with the information, Gallagher tells him that he, Gallagher, is an extraterrestrial lawman and that they are in fact pursuing an alien thrill killer who has the ability to take over human bodies. Beck dismisses the story as insane and leaves Gallagher incarcerated in a jail cell at the police station. Back at the Masterson's house, the alien leaves the dog's body and enters Masterson's. In the morning, Masterson goes to the police station and seizes a number of weapons, sparking a shootout between himself and the station's police officer as he attempts to track down Gallagher. Convinced that Gallagher's story, due to Masterson's immunity to excessive bullet wounds, Beck realizes that from his cell, and the two confront Masterson. During the resulting shootout, Masterson confirms that Gallagher is an alien law enforcement named Algaig, who has been pursuing the alien ever since it murdered his family and his partner on another planet. When Algaig first came to Earth, he inhabited the body of Robert Stone, a park ranger, then assumed the identity of Lloyd Gallagher after the real Gallagher was killed in a fire. Though Beck manages to stop Masterson, Algar, or Gallagher, reveals that his weapon cannot kill the alien when it is inside a human body, as a weapon does not work on human skin. So the alien weapon is completely useless on human beings. It is only good on the slug. So kind of to wrap it up a little bit on that, Algar leaves Gallagher's body and ends up inhabiting Beck's body because Beck gets mortally wounded trying to keep the thrill kill creature, because they never give it a name. Trying to keep that thing from getting out and hurting anybody else. They end up killing it, but Al Gang goes into Beck's body and basically takes over Beck's life because Beck is about to die. Beck tells him to do it because Beck knows he's dying. He's like, look, you lost your family. My family's about to lose me. Why don't you take over my body and you can keep an eye on any of these other things coming back? So they agree. And at the very end, Beck goes and lives his life out with an alien being inside of him. But the Al Gang alien is different from the slug creature. It's more of a light passing between two individuals. It's more of an energy being as opposed to the slug creature, which I thought was weird. I mean, I know why they did it. You know, you don't want your good guy looking like a slug, especially in 1987. But I think it would have been more interesting if they were exactly the same species.
Mm-hmm.
This movie is known for its soundtrack, which was incredible. There are 3 songs by Concrete Blonde on there, including Still in Hollywood, Song to Kim, and I want to say Chew You Up and Spit You Out's also on, which is a alternate version of Still in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
The way they crash those red Ferraris is awesome. The sex scene between Claudia Christensen as the alien and the Rube, who she just pulls into the car with her, is insane because she basically has sex with him and then murders him. Throws him out of the car and steals his car. It's rough, but through the whole thing, they're playing Still in Hollywood. It's one of those films that, yes, it was New Line Cinema, so it was independent, just like the Nightmare on Elm Streets were. But New Line Cinema had more of a budget than a lot of these other productions like Canon and things like that. All the Roger Corman stuff. So it's a little bit better. Plus, they filmed it all through the streets of LA. And you get to see some of the LA nightlife from the mid to late 80s, which is kind of awesome. Because you don't always get to see that. It's usually a set or something, but no, they actually filmed it out on the streets in LA. Plus the record stores and things like that. This one is one of my favorites. I could not get enough of this movie. Right. You've seen this one, right?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it. No.
Oh, yeah. You should give this one a pass. Give this one a try. This one's it's good. It's real well made. It's a good alien movie.
No, I think you said it right. I think I should give all of these a pass because they all sound perfectly horrible.
No. This is great. You get Michael Nouri and Claudia Christensen and Kyle MacLachlan playing an FBI agent who's not really an FBI agent, which is what he did in Twin Peaks.
Right. No, I don't find a whole lot redeeming about any of these 5. So
not so much.
I don't think they're going to be ones that I'll be seeing anytime soon.
All right. Fair enough. But you should at least go in and look at our YouTube playlist and see the trailers to, kind of get a visual of what we're talking. Or look at the picture. Well, you're going to look at the pictures anyway because you have to upload them. Thank you for that.
That's very true. I do have to see them when I upload them. So.
Oh yeah, you'll get to see the Black Audrey too, and you'll look at it and go, yeah, that's exactly what that is.
Right.
But yeah, that's basically it for the late Halloween 5 horror sci-fi films from the minds of Roger Corman. And
mostly the minds of Roger Corman, right?
Yes. 3 of them are definitely Roger Corman productions.
Right. Which, if you're not
Lawrence
familiar,
Arabia in space.
Well, if you're not familiar with Roger Corman, he's pretty much the king of the B movies. So.
Yeah. I will do an episode on Roger Corman. Though, the thing about Roger Corman, I may have to do 2. Because, that guy started working in the 50s and didn't stop until just a couple of years ago.
Right.
He's still alive, too. He's almost 100.
Wow.
Yeah. He's in his 90s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did not realize he was that old.
Yeah. Well, he started in the early 50s.
Right. Well, cool. I guess, some people out there may take a chance with him and give him a watch. I don't know that I will, but, somebody out there might.
They definitely want to give him, it's good to sit around and eat popcorn while watching these. Right.
Yeah, that's very true with Roger Corman movies. So cool. Give those a shot if you want. So with that, I guess we'll step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off Medium, Port Clinton News Herald, Daily Mail, Unsettling Things, and the Toledo Blade, and this is the Liske Family Massacre.
Oh.
So Halloween, it's always the perfect day to terrify and be terrified. Many people take it for what it is. It's an opportunity to be someone else. It's an opportunity to let the darkest part of your imagination come out and play. Unfortunately, many people have taken this in the most literal sense of the expression. Some might use the opportunity to blend in with the crowd of avid Halloween celebrators and seek out their victims for the fun of it, while others may take this as a chance to unleash terror on people that had the misfortune of crossing their path. The situation for the Liske family was no different as they met their end in the most horrifying possible way on Halloween. In 2010 Halloween night, the Liske family was brutally slain in their Ohio home, and teenager Devin Griffin came home from Sunday church services to find something out of a haunted house, which was all he could muster up to describe what he had walked into. Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum.
So the Liske family came into being when Susan and William Liske decided to get married in 2001, tying themselves together and their respective children. Susan had 2 sons from her previous marriage named Devin and Derek, while William had 1 child named William B.J. Jr. Susan's sons did have a good relationship with William as far as stepfather and stepsons go. However, one couldn't say that B.J. extended the same courtesy to Susan as his stepmother. As a result, their family constantly struggled with the idea of unity, ending up in positions where William was torn between choosing his loyalty towards his wife and his son. However, that did not stop him to do so until he took his final dying breath. So it was October 31st. This was a typical day for Devin, Susan's eldest son, when he returned home from church, as I said, after spending the night at his biological father's house. Hoping to unwind, Devin took no notice of his surroundings as he made his way toward his room to indulge in a few hours of video games. However, halfway into the game, he started to realize that the house was a little bit too quiet for that time of day. The house was usually bustling with activity, and on this particular day, there didn't seem to be any activity going on around the house at all. And considering it was Halloween, he had half expected everyone to be prancing with excitement, getting everything ready for that night.
Mm-hmm.
So a little confused, he made his way to his parents' bedroom about 1:30 that afternoon, thinking he would rouse them from their sleep. And seeing them both with their red quilts over their heads, Devin started speaking to them, hoping to wake them gently. However, he got no response. His panic started mounting as he went to his mother's side of the bed and shook her, but got, again, no response. And he was initially thinking they were playing a Halloween prank on him.
Right on. Because it's Halloween. He just got home.
Right. So he pulled the blanket off her and William, and the last thing he remembered was all the blood before he screamed, he cried, and he ran out of the house while calling his aunt for help. He ran out of the house before looking for his brother Derek Griffin, who was 23 years old, not knowing what had happened and if he was in danger by staying in the house, so he ran.
Yeah.
After police arrived at the scene of the crime, they went right to the crime scene, and upon observation, it was revealed that William had been shot in the head and face about 5 times. On the other hand, Susan had been sexually assaulted before she was shot in the head 3 times at a very close range. And this was a very brutal sight for anybody to witness, but to think that a young teenager was the first one to witness all this was just horrifying.
Yeah.
The police set out to Derek's room, which Devin had forgotten to check in his flurry of anguish. However, the door to his room had been locked from the inside. The police broke it down and saw Derek curled up on his bed with his back facing them and his face towards the wall next to his bed. His autopsy would later reveal that he died from blunt force trauma to the head.
Ugh.
It was a death that came as fast as it could before Derek could feel more of the pain that could have been inflicted upon him, and there was no clear evidence of a struggle. All the family...
So he got hit while he was asleep, probably.
Well, all the family members were killed in their beds.
Yeah.
In a matter of a few hours, Devin had lost all of his family without word or reason. His brother's death also came as a blow as he was reeling from the end of his mother and stepfather. The police, however, had a fair idea about the murderer. After finding evidence and how the scene showed no signs of struggle, they deemed that it could only be an inside job, like the claw hammer with Derek's blood, as well as muddy footsteps near the family's deck. Devin could have easily been their first suspect, as the neighbors claimed to hear what sounded like gunshots around 6 a.m. when Devin was with his father. His background, however, showed no red flags for being capable of something like this either. However, there was one family member who did. When the police looked into BJ's history, he had quite the criminal record. He was a bully. He often got in trouble at school. The official police records on BJ started in early 2002 while BJ was 16 and he was on house arrest. This was the first time that William had to call for police to come to their home. BJ had been threatening to harm himself and his father had no idea how to stop him. And when police arrived, BJ attacked the police.
Oh.
In October of 2004, he argued with Susan and punched her in the chest. He had hit Susan with a coffee mug just 2 months after that incident before running away with her car keys. He was found at that point to stand incompetent to stand trial on those charges due to schizoaffective disorder, and the charges were later dropped. Trying to get BJ the help he needed, his family moved him into a group home in Sandusky where he could get mental health treatment. But it really didn't seem to be working. BJ was involved in several fights with his father when he went to pick him up and others at the facility, resulting in the police being called 3 different times. At the time of the killings, BJ was 18 years old and he was no longer living at home. His father had kicked him out when BJ attacked Susan as she was in the shower, and that attack landed BJ a stay in the hospital where he received treatment for the schizoaffective disorder bipolar type. His aggression towards her grew more over the years. He once attacked her while she was in the shower as she was in her most vulnerable state, but she was able to fight him off. BJ reasoned he didn't like the authority his stepmother tried to exert over the household. However, after every act of aggression, BJ was either hauled away for the cops or his father. He spent a lot of time being taken away.
Yeah.
Once again,
actually, if he attacked her in the shower, kind of the sexual assault now makes sense. Yeah, I think there was something else going on in his mind.
Well, once again, the police released him because he was found not competent to stand trial. Instead, he was taken to a mental facility to recuperate before William applied for his guardianship. Family friends had talked to William often about him and his family's safety with BJ around. They thought that William needed to take precautions. Neighbors also believed it was BJ who killed and tortured their pets over the years, even though they had never caught him in the act. William had been making an effort to reinstate his relationship with BJ a week before his murder and has taken his son on vacation with him on a deer hunting retreat. Everything seemed to be well when both BJ and William made it back safe and sound just 24 hours before the murders. On the night of their return, however, the father and son drank heavily, with William allowing BJ to stay on the couch for that night. There was our first mistake.
Wow, I mean, took him hunting. This guy's got mental problems and you put a gun in his hand. Is that really the...
Well, and then allowed him to stay at the house. That was the big mistake right there. He took him home. They were drinking and he allowed him to stay at the house. After the murder, the police found BJ in the same cabin he stayed at while he vacationed with his father, and BJ later pleaded guilty, allowing the death penalty to be taken off the table, but life in prison without parole taking his place. In subdued tones, William J. Liske, 24 at the time of the 2010 murders, pleaded guilty to 3 counts of aggravated murder in the deaths of his father, stepmother, and stepbrother, and faced life in prison without parole. As part of the plea agreement, all other charges were dropped, including firearm specifications. Ottawa County Common Pleas Judge Bruce Winters accepted the plea agreement, and citing that a gag order would remain in effect until after the sentencing, both prosecutor and defense attorneys declined to comment after the plea. However, in 2011, at 29 years old, BJ committed suicide in prison at the Ross Correctional Institution. There were no signs of foul play. All the injuries seemed to be self-inflicted.
Oh, man.
And that is the sad, unfortunate story of the Liske Family Massacre.
That's just awful. That's awful for everybody involved.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that was short. I got as much information as I could off that. It was just...
Yeah. Well, I mean, with the mental health and stuff like that, and gag orders being listed, there's probably a reason why there's not a lot of info.
Right. Trying to find something at Halloween. This happened on Halloween Day. So, just something for our listeners to take in as their Halloween murder.
Halloween 2. Well,
yeah, our second Halloween. That's pretty cool that we made it to our second Halloween.
Yes. I can't wait to do our second Christmas. or
Yeah.
holiday.
Yeah. Got to figure out what we're going to do for Christmas this year.
Yeah.
We've got Thanksgiving around the corner now that we're late on our Halloween episode.
Well, that's okay. Maybe somebody will. If we list it in the episode list as Halloween 2, maybe people will listen to it later on during Halloween.
Maybe that would be interesting. Well, again, I'm sorry that one was a little short, but as you said, with the gag orders in place and attorneys declining to comment on what happened and everything, it was a little hard to find a whole lot of information on this one.
Right on.
So, but they, there wasn't a whole lot of investigation. They had their suspect fairly quickly, and
he confessed.
We're able to move. So, yeah. So that'll take us to the end of yet another recording week, yet another Halloween episode. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, you can find our information on nerderyandmurdery.com. You can find our links to our social media as well as our contact information. So if you want to let us the things you'd like to hear, the things you don't want to hear, you can always request specific subjects. We've had several that we've had from our listeners who have asked us for particular subjects. So please continue to do that. We really enjoy that.
We also have a YouTube channel, which you can get to by just typing in Nerdery and Murdery. It's got a lot of videos and playlists and things we think is funny and things we don't. Thank you.
You can also find the link to our merchandise, where if you wish to show your Nerdery and Murdery fandom, you can certainly do that there. You can also find the link to our Patreon, where if you wish to donate to help keep this show going, help us with our costs, you can go there. You not only get episodes early, but you do get exclusive episodes, which we produce from time to time. We try to do those once a month. So do get out there and listen to those. We put information on our website about the episodes, but the episodes themselves are exclusive just to our patrons.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. And finally, please do remember to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us, helps other people find our content, get our information. We seem to be getting some more people from the UK that are listening to us now, so that's very interesting. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your murdery.
Cue the music.